Hi students, welcome to Study Smart channel. Today we are going to look into chapter 4, Form 2 Science, Body Defense Mechanism. Let's start. Alright students, I am kicking off this video with a segment called What's in it for me? What's in it for you in this video that makes it important to watch until the end? Let's find out. First, we have the definition of pathogen and antigen. You will learn what is pathogen and what is that called as an antigen. What is the difference between these two? Are they same or are they different? Next, you will learn all the ways the pathogen can enter into the human body. Thirdly, you will learn about the body defense mechanism if the pathogen already enter into your body. You will learn about all three body defense mechanism: first line defense mechanism, second line defense mechanism, and third line defense mechanism. Next, you will learn about immunity system with the analogy of making coffee by yourself. Also, you will learn about the immunity system with the analogy of someone else making coffee for you. What's the difference? You will find it out soon. And last but not least, the most important part, you will learn about a smart question and also the smart answer. Let's start our video. First of all, let's get to know about pathogen and antigen first. Do you know what is pathogen and antigen? Well, pathogen are microorganisms that can cause disease. As we saw in the first part of chapter 4, bacteria, protozoa, fungi and viruses are considered as pathogen because they can cause disease. Each pathogen has a unique antigen which is regarded as a threat by the immune system. So, our immune system will start produce antibody in response to any pathogen that enter our body. Now, let's look into how pathogens can enter into our body. There are few ways pathogens can enter into our body, which is through nose, skin wound, insect bite, injection, urine, and finally through feces. So let's understand each of these points in detail. Do you know that when an infected person sneezes or coughs, tiny droplets containing pathogens can be expelled into the air? And if there is someone nearby, they have high chances to inhale these droplets and introduce the pathogens into their respiratory system. Next, pathogens can enter the body through openings in the skin, such as cuts and wounds. Once the skin barrier is opened up, pathogens can directly access the bloodstream, resulting in infection. Other than that, certain insects such as mosquitoes can carry pathogen in their saliva. When they bite a person, these pathogens can be introduced into the bloodstream through the insect's bite wound. Do you still remember what we call the organism or animal that can carry and transmit pathogens from an infected person to a healthy person? If you forgot, you may find the answer in my previous video. Also, I will let you know the answer at the end of this video. Stay tuned. Moreover, pathogens can enter the body through injection of contaminated substances. The practice of sharing needles among drug users or receiving injections with improperly sterilized needles can directly introduce pathogens into the bloodstream. The last two ways pathogens can enter our body is through contact with surface contaminated with infected urine and feces. This could happen through poor hygiene practices such as not washing hands after using the restroom or consuming contaminated food or water that is already contaminated with waste materials. So, in summary, pathogens can enter our body through nasal, skin wound, insect bite, injection, and through contact with waste materials such as infected urine and feces. Now, we are in the most important part of this chapter, our body defense mechanism. What if pathogen manage to enter our body through one of the way we discussed earlier? Will our body able to fight back? Yes, definitely. All living things born as a fighter, we definitely can fight back those pathogens that enter our body. Technically, our body have three lines of defense mechanism. First line of defense, second line of defense, and third line of defense. If the first line fails to fight with the pathogen, the second line will take its position and ready to show some action. If the second line also fail, we have third line defense mechanism. But how if the third line also fail? Oops, you get the disease. Now, let's look into detail on first line defense mechanism. There are few body parts that act as a first line defense agent. First of all, we have tears, saliva and mucus. These agents can trap pathogens so they can be flushed out from the body because they contain chemicals called enzymes. They can kill many types of bacteria by breaking down their cell walls. Second, we have our skin. Our skin is one of the effective barrier against most of the pathogens, unless it's broken by a cut. Lastly, we have cilia, stomach acid and urine as our first line defense mechanism. What are cilia? Cilia are microscopic hair on the cell that line the airways, and they will move back and forward, pushing the mucus and trap pathogens out of the airway. As for stomach acid, it will kill many of the pathogens we swallow before they can cause an infection. And lastly, urine can flush out pathogens out of the bladder. If all the first line defense mechanism fails to do their job, our second line defense mechanism will take action. Getting fever is one of the second line defense mechanism. Increase in our body temperature above 38 degrees Celsius will slow down or even kill some of the pathogen. Secondly, we have inflammation. Inflammation is the painful redness and swelling around the site of an infection. Inflammation happens because more blood is directed to the part of the infected body. Blood contains white blood cells that are specialized to fight off pathogens from the infected body part. And lastly, and also the most common second line defense mechanism is the process known as phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is when the white blood cell destroy anything that they don't recognize as a part of the body. They do this by eating or engulfing it. Alright students, now time for some smart question. Sometimes our body will produce yellow discharge, which is also known as the pus, around the wound. What our body trying to tell to us by producing the pus? Think about this and I will let you know the answer at the end of this video. The third line defense refers to the immune system of the body. This line of defense kicks in when the pathogens manage to pass through the first two defense mechanisms. Before that, you need to understand that the villain and the hero of our body. The villain or the bad guy is the pathogen, while the hero is the antibody. So, if the pathogen manage to pass through the first and second line defense, our body will produce antibody to fight against the pathogen. Antibodies bind to the unique antigen of the pathogen to identify them. Each type of pathogen has unique antigen. This means that they can only bind to antibodies with a matching type, similar to a lock and key. Once an antibody binds to a pathogen, the white blood cell will release millions of matching antibodies into the blood. The binding of antibody to the antigen is known as the antigen-antibody complex. Antibody will fight and neutralize the pathogen. After the infection has been defeated, some of the white blood cells remain as a memory cell. So, if you are infected by the same pathogen again, the third line of defense will respond faster and stronger than it did the first time. So, this is what it means that to become immune to a disease. In summary, our body defense mechanism consists of three lines of defenses. first line, second line and third line. First line of defense mostly consists of the skin layer, the mucus, tears and also the cilia. Second line of defense consists of the phagocytosis by the white blood cell. And the third line defense is the immunity system. Now let's look into the subtopic immunization. What is immunization? Immunization is a way to protect the body against harmful disease by stimulating the immune system to produce an immune response. There are two types of immunization, namely active and also passive. There are some study tips over here. For you to remember the active and passive immunization, remember active is an immunization in which you make your own cup of coffee, while passive is a type of immunization where you are asking someone else to make the coffee for you. So, how the making coffee is related to the body immunity? Alright, when it comes to active immunity, it means that body secrete the antibody by itself. That's why active immunity is referring to you make your own cup of coffee. When it comes to passive immunity, the body will gain the antibody from the external source, which means that for you to remember passive immunity, remember that you are asking someone else to make the cup of coffee for you. Okay students, now you already understand the difference between active and passive immunity. Both active and passive immunity can be further divided into natural and artificial based on the way the antibody is obtained. So, for active immunity, which stands for the body secrete the antibody by itself, the natural way is when a person get a disease and the body secrete antibody in order to fight the disease. While the artificial active immunity is through vaccination, in which the antigen will be injected to the body of the person in order to induce the body to produce the antibody. So can you see the difference? Okay, active immunity means the body need to secrete the antibody by itself, but the antibody can be secreted either natural way or artificial way. Natural way means you get a disease and then your body secretes the antibody in order to fight the disease. While artificial way means is through the vaccination, in which you inject a fake antigen in order to induce your body to produce the antibody. So you can see that both natural and artificial of active immunity, the body is creating the antibody by itself. Passive immunity refers to the body gains antibody from external source, which means that you are asking someone else to make the coffee for you. Okay, even the passive immunity we can divide into natural and artificial way. So the natural passive immunity refer to when a baby gets antibody from the mother through breastfeeding or when the baby is inside the placenta of the mother. So in this case, the baby still get the antibody from an external source, but in this case the external source is the baby's mother, but in a natural way. So this is what known as natural passive immunity. And the second one we have is the artificial passive immunity. So artificial way of getting antibody from an external source is by injecting antibody for severely ill person. So this is a way of getting antibody in an artificial way. Now let's look into the graph for active and passive immunity. So we start with active immunity first. Active immunity means body secrete the antibody by itself. So the analogy is you make the coffee by yourself. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, active immunity can be divided into natural and artificial. So still remember what is the natural way of obtaining active immunity? Yes, when a person gets sick and then the body of the person will secrete the antibody to fight against the disease. That is a natural way of obtaining active immunity. So how the graph will looks like? Okay, you can see in the graph over here, during the first infection, the antibody produced will be at low level. Okay, why the first infection antibody will be at low level? Because that's the time your body getting to know the antigen. So it's trying to identify the antigen. So the antibody produced will be a low level. Okay, but the second time your body being infected, your body already have the memory cell. So your white blood cell already know this is the pathogen that I encountered before, so I know what is the antibody can fight against this pathogen. So the white blood cell can easily secrete the antibody needed for the second time. So that's why the graph for active natural immunity will be 2 peak. Alright, now we go to the artificial active immunity. Artificial active immunity, how you get the artificial active immunity is through the injection of the antigen. Fake antigen, when you inject into your body will create the antibody for the fake antigen. Okay, so how this thing occur is by the injection of the vaccine. Okay, this is what we call as a vaccination. First time when you inject the vaccine, your body cannot create that much of antibody. But the second time when you inject the vaccine, the immunity level will be achieved because of the concentration of the antibody will be high enough. Now let's look into the graph for passive immunity. Okay, passive immunity means the body gain the antibody from external source, which means that you're asking someone else to make the coffee for you. That is passive immunity. So we can divide passive immunity into natural and artificial way. So the natural way of obtaining passive immunity is when a baby gets the antibody through the mother from the breastfeeding or through the placenta. That is the natural way of getting passive immunity. So if you look at the graph for natural passive immunity, you can see that the concentration of antibody in the blood gradually increase until it reach the immunity level, but after a certain point it start to drops back. Okay, why is it so? Because this is a passive immunity. You are obtaining antibody from an external source. So the immunity level will not be permanent. It will be temporary. So normally once a baby achieves few months after it born, the immunity from this breastfeeding and also from the external source from the mother will start to drops. Now let's look at the artificial way of obtaining passive immunity. So the artificial way of obtaining passive immunity is by injecting the anti-serum itself. So when you inject the anti-serum, which is a type of antibody, what will happen? It will directly increase and give effect immediately. It will give effect immediately, but you need to know that the concentration of the antibody will only last until it fight the disease. Once it already fight the disease, the antibody will start to drop back. So you need to have second time you need to inject the anti-serum in order to make the antibody to be effective. So inject again, but it only lasts for few weeks and then after that it will drops back. So normally artificial passive immunity will be only injected for person who are severely ill and their body cannot create enough antibody to fight against the disease. Alright students, time for smart answer for our smart question. Okay, my smart question for you was, sometimes our body will produce yellow discharge around the infected area. This is also called as pus. Okay, what our body trying to tell to us by forming the pus? What does it mean? Have you find the answer yet? Alright, let's discover the answer now. Okay, what is pus? Pus is actually when all the white blood cell that is fighting against the pathogen, but unfortunately the white blood cell already lost the fight. So what will happen? Your white blood cell already lost the fight against the pathogen. So this is when the pus will start to form. Okay, pus is when a dead white blood cell build up at the site of the infection. So that is what we call as a pus. Okay students, we have done with our study topic today. I really hope you learn a lot of new things and also you learn a lot of smart tips and smart questions. Okay, until we meet again in our next video, thank you and have a nice day. Bye!